And one of the things too that we're trying to do at Sedo is incorporate new tools to help people really narrowly tailor the use of their domains to avoid these problems. We're introducing keyword blocking tools that can allow us to say, you know, this domain should never be associated with these words. And one of the nice things about that is that when we get trademark complaints through our rights protection program, this is going to give us the ability to say, thank you for the complaint, but this is a descriptive domain. And we're not going to delete it from our database, but we will at least take steps to make sure that it doesn't use keywords associated with your goods or services. And that way we can have the flexibility to just tailor how the domain's used instead of having to block it outright. Avoiding confusion. You definitely want to always have consumer confusion in mind. It's the goal of trademark law is to avoid consumer confusion, and it's a great defense when you can say, I've done all these things to avoid consumer confusion. You know, one of the things, we put disclaimers at the bottom of our parking pages to try to, you know, as an evidence of that, but the legal relevance is, yeah, it's fairly minimal. You know, it has to be a big, bold, giant thing at the top of it for it to really have much effect, but we found that really hurts CTR, so we tucked it away kind of more quietly. Yep, it's true. A big part of it too is just common sense. You know, thinking about it in terms of, if this was my trademark, would I be upset by this use? Thinking about how to deal with once you finally do get a trademark complaint is a very important thing too. You know, a lot of times there's just innocent domain owners who have, you know, either registered a big block of domains, whether it was, say, through tasting or buying a portfolio or something like that, and then they just take them all and park them in mass. You know, there could be no intent to infringe a trademark, but just because the domain's in there, you know, it can get you some trouble. You know, one case that we assisted in the UK was over Gabum.co UK, which was a staffing services company in the UK. And oddly enough, that most of my examples are the UK, but you can tell where I spend most of my time dealing with. But this was, the domain owner had the domain, as many others he had, and he didn't even know, he did a trademark registration search. There was nothing for it. It was an unregistered trademark, but this was the UK, common law, rights get granted with use, not with filing. So they did have trademark rights with it, but he had no intent. He actually did just the opposite. He went out and tried to find out if there was any trademark rights, and there weren't. So their lawyer sent him a cease and desist, and he made the mistake of just kind of sitting on it too long. He felt like he was in the right, you know, but he didn't respond. Well, they took him to court the next week. They didn't even wait a week, and they filed a lawsuit. And you know, and he was like, "Hey, you can have the domain. You know, I don't want trouble here. I don't want the domain. Take it." And they were like, "No, no, no. You have to pay our legal fees now, and we've already spent, you know, £2,000, so you need to pay that too." So he ended up having to go to court to fight it. You know, and luckily he won in the end. And believe it or not, they actually they sued Sedo too. But I was lucky enough to get a bulldog of an attorney in London who made quick work of that. It was pretty funny because we have the rights protection program. They never contacted us, you know, and there's actually legal ethics at play here. You can't just run into court and sue somebody without trying to make good faith efforts to avoid it. And in the UK, this is actually codified into the legal profession, where they can't do that. But so prompt and timely responses are key. You know, it shows that you're serious. It shows that you're responsible. It shows that, you know, it's a transparent kind of thing where you're not trying to hide, that you know that any kind of claimed infringement wasn't intentional. You know, and it goes a long way if once it does get to court, of showing you to be a responsible businessman. And courts do view the entire story of a dispute when they make their decisions. And so you want to make sure that whenever you walk into court, that judge is going to think favorably of you, and because you've done all of these things, that you can tell a story that is compelling. I responded quickly. I went out and got a good attorney. I disabled any kind of keyword-related content to avoid any potential infringement, even if you thought it was innocent. You know, and where Sedo comes into play, contact your account manager. Let us know. Let us know so we can make sure that nothing happens with that domain. How can Sedo help? What do we do? How, you know, it's one thing for me to stand up here and talk and say, you know, okay, you guys have to do all this, but you know, we'll just sit up here and, you know, insulate ourselves. We don't take that philosophy. We see the long-term health of this business model is very important, and we're going to do everything in our power to protect it. You know, we had the great speech from Phil yesterday about the ICA and the efforts that we're doing there, and you know, Sedo was very proud members of that. and we support it 100%. You know, because it's going to take that kind of industry-wide efforts to make sure that the long-term health of the industry is protected. But another thing we try to do is that we try to be vocal. Sedo is a member of the International Trademark Association. We have a trademark. It's registered internationally. You know, my legal team actually is very aggressive at protecting our trademark, and so we have every right to be part of that association. But when I go down to those meetings and the different roundtables they have these protecting your brands online roundtables, and whenever they're in the U.S., I go out of my way to be there. And even if I'm not necessarily the speaker, you know, I make sure that as soon as the topic comes up of parking or the secondary market, that I raise my hand and make it very clear to everybody in the room that it's not the boogeyman that they think it is, you know, and that they have limitations in their rights and that they need to be respectful of a legitimate industry, and that if they are overly aggressive and overstate their rights, they will limit their ability to get the domains that they need for their businesses. So they need to be responsible in the same right. In the beginning, that wasn't very warmly received, you know, but since we've been going and participating and talking to people and really kind of getting people to see things reasonably, it's been great lately. We're actually, when we go to these meetings, we're very warmly received, and people come up to us and tell us about how helpful we've been in letting them come up with good strategies for protecting their brands, but without harassing people. We didn't want to have a system where just because somebody complains, we automatically take a domain down, you know. And so we have an in-house legal department, and almost their primary function is to review these RPP complaints that we get. We toss out the frivolous ones, and we act on the ones that are legitimate. You know, but it lets the trademark industry know that we're not just going to sit idly by and let them dictate the conversation. You know, and so when we deny their complaint and they get all mad, but then we tell them why we denied their complaint, we never hear from them again. You know, and that means that we're protecting our users from these frivolous complaints that can essentially result in reverse domain hijacking if it goes too far. And God knows we can't trust UDERP, since most of the panelists are trademark attorneys protecting their own bottom line. And so we need to go out of our way to make sure the trademark holders know before they even file that case that they should lose it, even if they might win it, you know, given that reality. Another thing we try to do to be proactive is try to affect how different registries and other entities in the industry view the secondary market and view domain monetization. Nominet, for example, in administering the .co.uk, opened up an advisory hearing a few months ago on loosening up and revising some of their rules in their dispute procedure. You know, and most of the rules that they were thinking about were specifically designed to make and codify the legitimacy of the secondary market and the parking industry. And so we were very happy to file a long, lengthy opinion statement, you know, outlining all the legitimate things. And that's where we get a lot of credibility from the things we do, like the Rights Protection Program, because when we write those letters, we can say these dispute resolution services are designed to protect trademark holders. We share the same goal. We're doing it at our end. So let us self-regulate before you overly regulate. You know, and it's bearing fruit. Nominet is going to be loosening up their rules. We recently filed an advisory letter to the .au registry down in Australia on very similar issues. You know, and that's another area where the ICA is very active in making sure that the industry is represented when people are talking about any kind of rules changes. And then for a very practical matter on how Sedo can help is that we draft statements of fact for people when they get into a domain dispute. Now, granted, we're not going to go out of our way if it's a clear case of infringement, because we're certainly not going to put our ass on the line for something that's an obvious case. But when it's a situation where it's a generic domain being parked with a legitimate keyword, we are more than happy to write a very detailed statement of fact of how that domain has been used with our services and why it was not infringing, you know, and why there was no bad faith intent. You know, again, we want to assist domain holders in telling their story. And if we can provide a statement of fact on official company letterhead signed by one of our in-house attorneys, you know, that goes a long way in helping that domain owner tell his story and potentially win that case. Ultimately, it comes down to, you know, this is everybody's business, and we have to make smart decisions. And a little bit of research and a little bit of common sense can go a long way.